So just real quick from a product standpoint, I don't know if, I'm sure there's folks on here who are leveraging these technologies, but just to give some visibility into what Palo Alto does in terms of providing solutions in this area, we really have three different types of software firewalls, and then actually probably technically a fourth that I'll cover here in a bit. And that is starting with our VM series. So, and again, VM series started, I think, 11 or 12 years ago to really 100% of the use cases were to protect virtualization, a VMware environment. But now, if you fast forward to 2024, probably 70% plus of folks who are VM series customers are using VM series to protect public cloud environments. So that's really our primary solution to protect both virtualization environments and cloud, and public cloud and private cloud. So our next solution is called what we call the CN series. And this is really for customers who are starting to adopt containerized development ecosystems. So environments like Kubernetes. And this is not something that everybody's doing, but there are definitely enough organizations out there that are starting to leverage containerized ecosystems for their application development, and there needs to be a solution to secure those, just like any other environment. And so we've provided a software firewall, specifically a form factor to address that use case. Even the VM series, you can use the VM series to inspect traffic going in and out of that container, but even our own solution, the VM series, has a hard time with visibility inside that container. So the CN series is actually able to go and look at those nodes that are inside the container, and again, kind of give visibility in what's going on inside that container, but also inspecting and protecting that lateral movement inside the container itself. And then the last solution I have on this slide is what we call our Cloud NGFW solutions for either AWS or Azure. And these are managed firewalls. So it's essentially our SaaS version of a firewall. And this is for customers who would prefer to keep everything up in a native environment. So they don't want to be messing around with a third party, and bringing that into a cloud. They would prefer to live in either Azure or AWS environment and really do all their work there and all the management. And at the same time, they don't want to be building firewalls and maintaining firewalls and applying updates and things like that. So this solution is really for customers who want to just have the same experience that they might have with a native AWS or Azure firewall, but really with the additional protection that we would provide with the VM. It's essentially a managed VM series. We also have solutions for both Google and Oracle, but they're OEM. So essentially, if you buy a Google NGFW firewall or an OCI firewall, underneath the hood, you are buying a VM series firewall from Palo Alto Networks. What's great about all these different software firewalls is, again, we spend a lot of time working with all these partners here on the left to make sure that they're well integrated, that they work extremely well in any of these environments, so that it doesn't matter which public cloud provider or which hypervisor provider that you might be working with, or even which containerized vendor you might be working with. We have a solution that will work extremely well in those environments. And again, to us, just like you all, while security efficacy is extremely important, performance is also very important to us. So making sure that these our solutions are integrated in a way that there's no penalty, there's no waiting around for some security solution to apply their verdict on whether something is safe or not. Now, we get a lot of questions around why wouldn't I just use a native firewall from AWS or Azure? Just before it looks like I'm not picking on Azure or AWS. They're, first of all, a very important business partner for us. We're their customer, they're our customer. We are huge business partners with all cloud providers. But Yeah, but we get questions all the time. Hey, so should we use an AWS firewall or Azure firewall or a Palo Alto firewall? And so we don't have, because of our relationship with cloud providers, we don't have tons of data that we can provide openly to say, hey, well, this is why we're a lot better. But there are third parties, and there are reports and analysts and things that you can go find out on the public internet that will show you or will explain to you why you might not want to leverage a native firewall issued to you by your cloud provider. This is just on the left-hand side here, a source from a report called Secure IQ. It was a public test, a Secure IQ lab. You can find it on the link. You can find the link out there on the internet. But what they're saying is, whereas we might be able to catch almost 100% of what they were testing against, a native firewall, and again, we've obfuscated the names here, but the two other choices from two other large cloud providers are only going to catch maybe 50% of what they threw at those firewalls. And the proof is in the pudding. So what we've seen is for about all the customers who have been trying to adopt cloud, roughly half of those organizations have experienced some sort of security issue, and there might be a correlation between if they're using a native issued firewall and if they're experiencing issues. This could be one of the reasons why they're experiencing those issues. So I like to think of it as, on my home computer, I would feel comfortable using the anti-malware and anti-virus that comes native with my operating system if it was just me using that computer, but my kids use that computer and they go out and they do all sorts of crazy things on weird gaming sites and things like that. And so it makes sense for me to add additional capabilities and pay for better solutions than what comes for free with my computer. So sort of a similar analogy.
I'd like to add on to that.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as, with AWS or Azure, they're great at doing cloud technologies, but Palo Alto is great at doing security. Let them do what they do best. And Palo really outshines the native firewall capabilities, although it might be familiar. I would always go with the Palo Alto.
Thanks, Derek. Yeah, I'll just say thank you for that. There are things it's hard for me to say because of our relationship with CSPs, but yeah, I appreciate that input. So when I think of firewalls, I think of them as like a cell phone or a modern cell phone you would buy today. So while we have fantastic solutions, software, both hardware and software firewalls, the fact is that some of these threats that we're seeing out there are extremely advanced. And like I said earlier, some of these adversaries are leveraging cloud technologies and even AI now, ML. And so because we're seeing so many new threats, sophisticated threats, zero-day threats, having just the firewall itself or providing a firewall is really not the only thing that we do. We also provide what we call security subscriptions or security services on top of those firewalls. So just like a cell phone, you buy the cell phone to give you capabilities in terms of making phone calls, sending texts, taking pictures, sort of all the things that you would get natively from that mobile phone. But if you want additional capabilities, there might be reasons why you would want to buy apps and add apps to that phone. So again, just like phones, what we do is we have a suite of solutions that we provide that you're able to add to these firewalls depending on the environment and depending on the use case that you have those software firewalls in. So these may not be services you would add, like you wouldn't add necessarily all these to every software firewall that you have, or for that matter, every hardware firewall you have. But for different use cases, there might be reasons why you would want to add DNS security or URL filtering or sandboxing. So there are different scenarios. And what we've done is probably, I don't know, 10 years ago, we only had one or two of these services. And over time, we've added additional services that, again, maybe not every customer needs, or every environment needs, or every every firewall needs, but we've added these services because we're starting to see different use cases for different scenarios that customers might want to add additional capabilities to these firewalls. And again, we don't want to add these to every firewall because that would increase the cost of that firewall, and then it would be unfair to customers who maybe don't have those use cases in their environment. So this is really kind of a pick your own solution depending on the scenario that you're trying to solve for. But again, and also just to mention, we've continued the journey in terms of not just adding additional services, but improving these services. So a lot of these you'll see are now what we call advanced versions. And so really what we're doing is we're leveraging additional ML models to continue looking for these zero-day threats that we're starting to see, really explode in today's market. So switching gears real quick, a big thing for the customers that we work with is really this idea of vendor consolidation. And we're known as, again, you could look at any analyst report, we're always going to be in the upper right-hand corner for firewalls, again, whether that's hardware firewalls or software firewalls. So we're known as this sort of best-of-breed solution for network security and other different areas. But for us, based on customers' feedback and desire, we're trying to do everything we can to provide a platform that they can leverage as well. So we sent out a survey to our customers. About 3/4 of them said, yeah, you know what? We really want to reduce the number of security solutions that we're leveraging. I talked to a customer at a presentation a couple months ago that had 11 different firewalls. And I only know of like 3 or 4 folks that we run into a lot. So it blew me away that somebody would actually be using 11 different firewalls, because you think about the complexity that involves having different management solutions, having to rewrite different policies, just teaching your people how to use all these different tools. That just becomes a big problem. And Brian mentioned this at the beginning of the call. A lot of our customers are trying to adopt some type of zero trust framework. And again, zero trust is a very overly used term in the security world. And I was joking before the call that if you have 10 different people in the room, you're going to have 12 different opinions on what zero trust is. And so I'm not going to dictate what we think you should call zero trust, but really this is what we consider zero trust at Palo. And as you can imagine, we're a huge target for attackers. Every day we see a mind-blowing amount of attacks on our own network. And so the way we try to survive these attacks is really by adopting a zero trust framework, and the idea of eliminating implicit trust and then continuously validating that trust. That's really the framework that we adhere to at Palo. And again, tying it back to this idea of using different technologies, it becomes really complex to try to achieve some type of zero trust if you're leveraging all these different solutions, because they often don't work together. They might be competitors. Every time one gets acquired or needs an update, then usually you have to do work to integrate everything back together. And so as you have all these different tools, there's just more room for human error, and it makes it more difficult to remove that implicit trust.